The bells are ringing for me and my gal. The birds are singing for me and my gal. Everybody's been knowing to a wedding we're going, and for weeks they've been sewing every Susie and Sal. Well, you know, in Manhattan in the late 60s, there used to be a bunch of piano bars, maybe 20 or 30, sprinkling the town. And you could go into any one of these bars and hear guys like me sing songs like that, a Fred Astaire medley, a Gene Kelly medley, and of course, a Judy Garland medley. And I played in a little cafe called 3. It was on East 72nd Street. It was a very gay place, and one of my fans was named Richard Stryker. One night he said to me, "John," he had a terrible New York accent, "John," he said, "you write songs." He says, "Do you have anything that might suit Judy?" I said, "You bet I do." He said, "The reason I ask is because recently I've become very close to her." "Really?" "Yes, in fact, she's living with me." I found that hard to believe. I said, "You ought to take it easy on that inhalator, Richard, really." She'd been kicked out of the Sam Ritz Hotel. She owes 4 months' rent there and she can't pay it. They're holding her luggage until she pays up. She was on the street. I had to take her in. I mean, wouldn't you have done the same thing? She's Judy Garland. He said, "So why don't you come over tomorrow afternoon and bring your song, and we'll show it to her." Well, as I say, I didn't trust him, but I couldn't pass up the chance to maybe even meet Judy Garland. So I took my song and I ran down there. He had an apartment in back of Carnegie Hall. There's a series of studios in back of Carnegie Hall. And he opened the door and he handed me a glass. I said, "What's this?" He said, "Vodka. That's all we drink around here. And we mix it with Ritalin." I said, "Really?" I looked around the apartment. There was no Judy. I said, "Richard. He pointed upstairs to the sleeping loft. And he said, "Say hello." So I said, "Hello, Judy." There was a beat's pause, and suddenly a pair of sheer black pantyhose sailed over the railing and landed in a puddle at my feet. A minute later, Judy threw over her bra. I said to myself, "Gee, I wonder what's on her mind." But I said, "Hi, Judy." And she said, "Hi, I'll be down in a minute." A minute later, she was downstairs and clasping my hand in a very warm grasp. "I've had the most racking day," she had. "A man from the IRS was here, a Mr. Wong. He was dunning me about back taxes, and I couldn't concentrate. I just kept kind of singing under my breath, 'It's the wrong time and the wrong place.' I said, I always knew you'd be funny. You can see it in your movies." She had this strange way of talking. She put a little N sound, and I've reproduced it in the book before every operative noun or verb. So she would say, "Do you suppose we could hear something?" It made you hang on each phrase. I said, "Well, I thought maybe this one might have your name on it. I'd like to hate myself in the morning and raise a little hell tonight. I've got the urge to carouse and maybe raise a few brows, cut loose and pull all the stops out. Who cares if they call the cops out? I'd like to wake at noon feeling guilty and know somehow something isn't quite right. I'd like to lift my lids in the morning and wonder who I kissed and wonder," and Judy said, "who I missed." She was absolutely right. "Who I missed," I had written. "I just might hate myself in the morning. But what a dandy time I'll have tonight." And Judy pointed to herself and then to me, and she mouthed the phrase, "I'm with you." Well, my jaw fell 4 feet, of course. And I said, well, I must have said something, because she said, "Let's get the freak out of here." The three of us went to a little Spanish place called La Buena Mesa. And by this time, the adrenaline was really, really pumping. I mean, it was Judy Garland like a hot potato in my lap, right? And I got manic, and I started doing impressions. I have a friend named Will Jordan who taught me 4 or 5 impressions. I said, "Say, sweetheart, what's a nice girl like you doing in a joint like this?" And by that time it was 4:15 in the morning. We piled back into the van, Jenny still with us, not saying a word. And she turned to me and she said, "Well, you're not taking us back to Richard's, are you?" And I said, "Well, where do you want to go?" She said, "What's wrong with your place?" All right. At the time, I was living between apartments at my parents' place. That's the weirdest part of the story, really. She put her hands on my shoulders and she said, "You know what I'd like? Could I use the tub?" And I said, "Well, certainly, it's in there." She said, "Because I haven't had a bath in a week." Because Richard's place was so filthy, right? And when she came out of the tub, she was wearing only a towel. And she dropped the towel, and we began a romance that very night. At 5:30 the next afternoon, I got up, and I went down the hall to my mother's bedroom. She was sitting making up at her dressing table. I said, "Mom, we have a house guest," right? Marjorie said, "Who?" I said, "Judy Garland." She said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, I'll have to change." But when we got to Mary's, she sang a program of her standards. We had set all the keys. And then at the end, she said, "And now I'd like to sing a song that Johnny's written." And she took up the page of lyrics, and she sang "Hate Myself in the Morning." Well, it was an unbelievable experience for me as the composer, almost mystical. I felt as though I'd been transported to the top of Mount Olympus, and there were Gershwin and Cole Porter and Irving Berlin, and for a moment I felt that I had joined their ranks.